Hey everybody, I'm Anna McEwen. And now for Bob Switzer with the epic narrative.
Well, here we go. I mean, this is episode 52, so that means you've been listening to a year on Exodus, and I haven't quite mapped out the last. I don't know. We'll just see how it goes. My producer is and I agree with him. We go longer than a year, and it just becomes cumbersome. The first year we went. Do you remember that? The first season? Not first year. First season, we went 65, 66 episodes on the life of David. Now, it was a lot of fun, and we learned a lot during that season about how to do podcasts. Last year, it was the season on Genesis was it was less than 60, I think. And I think this one's going to be closer to a year. I think we're almost there, because again, we're not looking to break down every nuance of every sentence that is written about the law. We keep in mind that the enemy came in and stole what God intended by the tabernacle. And Jesus came and reset again God's goal. But God's goal was there at the beginning. God didn't change the goal. Remember, a covenant is where two people are seeking a higher purpose, and they draw each other toward that. So here we have a covenant in it. Let's add some syllables in there, Robert. Here we have a covenant that's covered on both ends by God. God is seeking a higher purpose here. He is not seeking the base of you sacrifice and try and impress me. But I mean, we see it still with Jesus in the New Testament, where religion had turned the temple into a place where you sacrificed an animal and you were temporarily good to go with God. And Jesus taught, you are the temple and you are good with God. Like he is always present. His goodness never leaves you. But here with the tabernacle, same thing, right? People step in and they produce a ritual that says, if I do these things, I'm good with God, at least for a little while. And Jesus comes back and is like, no, you didn't quite get that one right. You are the tabernacle. You are my people. It's the same way with let's see, the tabernacle. Hang on, I got to remember this. Yeah, the other thing is that because of God, we don't need the sacrifices. The sacrifices are not necessary. We just have to recognize what God is offering us. Even in the Old Testament, he's like, recognize what I offer you. And instead, it's like, no, I need to make an offering to you in order to be worthy of your presence. He's like, no, I'm literally offering you my presence. So in response to 1,000+ years of them desperately trying to offer something to God, he offers his son and says, all right, that whole system is over now. Do you get it? I'm putting an end to it. We're going to start a better covenant, a bigger, more inclusive, more intense, higher purpose covenant than the one before. The one before was great. This one's even better. It's more inclusive. It's eternal, because I have ended the system. Anyways, enough about theology. Oh, speaking of which, Bob, the engineer, rolled his eyes. Here we go. I know I've said this a lot. This view of God being good all throughout time is radical, and the way that we approach these scriptures is very unsettling for some people. Not for me, but I do understand how it is unsettling. See, theologians, much like any other academics, but for me especially, what I see in the world of archaeology is very similar to what I see in the world of theology, which is once you kind of pick a stream to go swimming in, it becomes personal, and therefore change becomes an attack. If somebody offers a theologian a different approach, then they take it personal, and you can see it in their books. Some of these theologians actually go after each other in full-on books that they then promote, and they call out the people who disagree with them. Now, I've seen it also with preachers. There are I don't know if you call them celebrity, but I guess so. They're well-known preachers who disagree and then go after each other from the pulpit. And they'll say, my colleague across the city, in LA, or there are those who have large congregations in this town or in this state who would disagree with me, but I say to you, and they go on with how much better they're, because you pick a stream and you just, to change it feels, the emotions you take personally. Like, how could I be wrong? You're saying I'm wrong. You're saying I'm a liar. You're saying that I've led people astray. And I would say to them, if any of them ever listen to something like this and they decide to come at me, I would be like, dude, or young, my dear, it's fine. I can be wrong. Now, I do think of the postmodern philosophy, being wrong is okay. They actually like it when their teachers and theologians and archaeologists can be wrong, and the science can change. But for a lot of years, coming out of the medieval days in the modern era, we still bump up against that mindset of, the scientific method brings you to a point where you have found the truth. You have gotten to the lowest common denominator. We now know exactly. And there's a lot of things where that method did determine a pretty solid stream of truth, where it's like, yeah, actually, that's basically an absolute. But when it comes to theology, and evidently archaeology, as I've studied, it is not, and anthropology for that matter, there just isn't a place where you can say this part doesn't ever change. There's a couple things that I would, die on that mountain for, but I wouldn't take it personal. It's just my passion is there, and you can come at me, and I don't mind being wrong. I'm probably not going to change my mind. See, it gets personal. So, if you're listening to this and you have wrestled with so many of these ideas that I throw out, it's okay to wrestle with them and leave them here. You can say, you know what, I listened to this podcast, slightly entertaining, a little annoying voice, crazy third person reference to himself as an engineer. But the guy's a nutcase. Don't listen to a word he says. You know what? We can still be friends. We really can. But if you're willing to engage in conversation, a legitimate conversation, if you're willing to be wrong and I'm willing to be wrong, then I think we can talk. So let's. But I just wanted you to know that I do know that for some people, even if they, this is what's crazy. I think some theologians and preachers, have studied some of this, and they know that there's an inconsistency in making God kill everyone, and they toss it up into the clouds of the cloud of the unknown. I can't explain it, but I know that God is good, and I know that He is righteous. So if He kills everyone, then I guess we're all okay with that. Let's just live our life here for Jesus. That's what they have to do. I get it, and they do that because changing is so hard when it feels like somebody's telling you that you are a bad person and you made a wrong choice and you have stood in the pulpit or written books or taught in a class and now you are wrong. Dude, I can't tell you how many sermons I thought of that I preached in my life where I would like to go back and be like, hey, let's, I was awfully manipulative in the way I approached that. I shouldn't have. I should have given you a choice. I didn't give you a choice. I need, whatever. There's stuff I want to go back on. Absolutely. So it's hard. And I have grace for those of you that are willing to do what we like to do here on the Epic Narrative, which is to say, okay, let's just ask what if? What if God really has been good all through time? Can we walk through these scriptures and find that consistently? And I believe so far we have. Do we have 100% answers on everything? Nope. Does any theologian? Nope. So I think we're good. All right. We're going to try and we're not going to push through. We're going to enjoy the ride through chapter 34 of the book of Exodus. The Lord said to Moses, chisel out 2 stones like the first ones and write on them words that were on the first tablets, which you broke. I will write on them words, which you broke. I love that. Just in case you don't remember, Moses, why we have to do this. Be ready in the morning, then come up to the Mount Sinai, present yourself to me there on the top of the mountain. No one is to come with you or be seen anywhere near them. I don't even want flocks or herds to graze near the mountains. So Moses chiseled out 2 stone tablets like the first ones and went up to Mount Sinai early in the morning. The Lord commanded him, and he carried the 2 stone tablets in his hand. And the Lord came down in the cloud and stood there with him and proclaimed to his name the Lord, and passed in front of Moses, proclaiming the Lord, compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands, and forgiving the wickedness and rebellion and sin. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children to the sin of the parents to the 3rd and 4th generations. Moses bowed down on the ground and worshipped, and he said, Lord, if I have found favor in your eyes, then let the Lord go with us. Although this is a stiff-necked people, forgive our wickedness and our sins, and take us as your inheritance. All right, he continues, but we're just going to pause for a moment. It'll be a long moment just between you and I. But here we go. So Moses gets to replace the stones that he chose to destroy. God's like, I want you to chisel out 2 stones. You know what they look like. You know how big they should be. I want you to bring them back up to the mountain. Which I'm sure Moses is like, yeah, I guess that one's on me. God didn't have to do that. But as always, I think in relationship, there's an opportunity to participate. And when you're going to renew, restore, reconnect, you have to take responsibility for what you did, for the breaking of it that you contributed to. And I think for me, there's a lesson in the relational connection here. And I think God is letting Moses know that. Listen, I didn't break this. You did. Like, you have a responsibility to kind of bring that back to the table. He's like, I'll write the words again. This is not a guilt trip. This is not, well, you broke it, you fix it. This is, let's see, will you take responsibility for your end of things? And Moses did. And I think that speaks to Moses's humility, because he could have easily, whined and been the victim and said, oh, it's not my fault. The people were dancing and worshiping an idol, and I got upset they weren't worthy of the words that you wrote, and yeah, whatever. Like, we all know people that play the victim. It's a slave mentality, that thing that says their behavior forced me to behave a certain way. I'm not responsible for the way I behaved. They're responsible for making me behave that way. That's a slave mentality. And those people, of course, none of my listeners would do this, but people who live in that mentality, that slave mentality, that victim mentality, it takes hard work to get out of it, because they've lived in a world in which they've literally not been responsible for anything that they've done, because they could always reflect it back to somebody else. And usually this is generational. And that's what makes it so hard, is because they're usually in a culture and or environment where some people aren't working to get out of the slave mentality. And so it just keeps recurring in the vocabulary of the household. It is hard work to get out. Imagine a whole nation of slaves trying to get out of the victim mentality, try to get out of the keep the master happy mentality, it is hard work. But here Moses doesn't push back. He just says, all right. And he cuts out 2 stones. I'm sure he did a great job. Moses is a skilled, highly intelligent, creative man. But I can't imagine that they looked as nice as the ones that he brought down. Were they as thin? Probably not. Were they 4 inches thick? Probably not. He had to carry them back up the mountain. I don't know if he strapped them to his back. I would, but maybe he had them in his hands. I don't know, but he carried them all the way up. It couldn't have been an easy trip. I don't know if, I mean, when I read, not even the flocks and herds can graze in front of the mountains. When I read that, every time I read that, I think, did God say that? Or did Moses just like add that in as he's remembering it? And nobody can get, not even the cows. Okay. I'm okay. Maybe, it's fine if God said it. It just seems, given the way God behaves on the mountain, it just seems excessive, but that's all right. 5-7, God describes himself. The Lord came down in a cloud and stood there with him and proclaimed his name, the Lord. And he passed in front of Moses, proclaiming, the Lord, the compassionate, gracious, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands, and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. This is pretty awesome. This is a great description of God. He describes himself as honestly, you know what this reminds me of is a story of Jonah. And this is why I believe many people miss what God's doing here. God comes down to Moses and he stands next to him. He's not a standoffish God. He doesn't say, get up here on the mountain. I'm going to fix what you broke because I'm just a really nice guy. But what you did here is terrible, and I don't appreciate it. Your behavior was over the top. You killed 3,000 people, you numbskull. No, he stands right next to him because that's what God does. He stands with you regardless of the choices you made. He's a good God. And he says, listen, I am who I am. I am the I am. And it says he passed in front of Moses. We discovered in the last episode, what is the goodness of God or the glory of God? It's his goodness. He passed in front of Moses. He brings his goodness to the front of, he's like, Moses, I don't want you to forget who I am. He doesn't show up with an angry face. He doesn't show up with thunders and lightnings and says, oh, you're lucky I missed. Almost took you out. No, he's like, this is who I am. Now, the last couple verses here in this paragraph, right? People love this one. Maintaining love to thousands and forgiving the wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Yet, preachers love that part. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children for the sins of the parents to the 3rd and 4th generation. Oh, he says, not only do I punish you, no, I take care of the next 4 generations. You're not going to get fully relieved from the results of the choices you've made for at least 100 years. That's how big, bad, powerful I am. Back off, people. Just back off. Pretty crazy, if that's what he said. But you're listening to the epic narrative. So what did we do? Oh, we went and looked at the words. The word punish can also mean the word visited. For the 4 generations. See, now, if I look at that and think God's going to punish people for the next 4 generations, after I just finished reading verses 5 and 6, I think, wait a minute, that doesn't look like the same God. How is a God who punishes for 100 years? In other words, he's going to punish innocent people who had nothing to do with the decision that was made that might have caused some negative ramifications. How is that Someone who's gracious, slow to anger, abounding in love, abounding in faithfulness, maintaining the love for thousands, and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. What just happened? So if you look, the word here speaks. The word speaks of attention, to visit, to look after, to care for. What? That word visited, that word punished, that's translated punished, can also mean to look after and to care for. So what God is saying here is that those that sin are going to have generational tendencies. And we'll just keep it to the slave mentality, right? You're in a culture where a certain level of self-preservation, personal rejection, disappointment, lying, thievery. These things are going to be cultural tendencies for generations. He says, I'm going to come and visit them. I'm going to care for them. Not for those generations, not just the current generation. I'm going to make sure my goodness is with those generations to come because they're going to have those same tendencies. I'm going to make sure that they know my goodness. And ideally, we will walk them out in the process and we will cut off those generational sins and bring them to a place of complete freedom and release the bondage and the chains that those tendencies bring. That's a huge difference from saying he's going to hold those generations guilty and accountable for the sins of people they've never met. But you see, it's a lot tougher to get people to come to the altar at the end of the message if God's going to care for them and visit them and help them recognize their tendencies and use the opportunity to bring light to darkness and to shut doors that have been open. Yeah, because you reap what you sow. He understands that. He put that into creation from out of the beginning. He knows that it was designed to be a principle of blessing. And that's what he's doing here. He's like, I have a principle of blessing people. I just described myself as compassionate, gracious, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, loving thousands, forgiving wickedness, forgiving rebellion, forgiving sin. And I am going to stick with those people even for generations to come to make sure that the things that their parents or grandparents might have opened, it gets shut. I'm going to make sure that they are visited and cared for. I'm sorry, right there, right? We should literally end the episode right there because you need to work with that. You need to spend some time on that because that is huge. And Moses' response is what? It's conviction. And conviction, not condemnation. It's conviction, not shame, not guilt. It's conviction. And conviction is an aspect of love that draws people closer in a relationship, and it looks to remove anything that might be in the way of that relationship. And that's exactly what Moses does. He bows down and he worships and he says, if I have found any favor in your eyes, then let the Lord go with us. Although this is a stiff-necked people, forgive our wickedness and our sin and take us as your inheritance. He knows that he's found favor in God's eyes. So he's speaking out of a place of honor and respect. And he reminds God that you are a forgiving God, you are a faithful God, a compassionate God, maintaining love to thousands and forgiving the wickedness of everyone. So I'm letting you know, we are a stiff-necked people. We tend to get all prideful and haughty about our decisions. We tend to play the victim because of the generations that we come from as slaves. But take us as your inheritance. And the Lord said, I will. Verse 10, I'm making a covenant with you before all the people. I will do wonders like never done before, but in any nation in all the world. And the people who live among you will see how awesome it is, the work that I, the Lord, will do for you. Listen to that sentence. This is verse 10 of chapter 34. The people you live among. Oh, I mean, he lays it out. The Amorites, Canaanites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. The people you live among, not the people you will wipe out and kill every living being of. Come on. Pay attention to what the scripture says. He says the people that you live among are going to see wonders that have never been done for any other nation in all the world. God's like, listen, I'm making a covenant with you. I'm going to so bless your socks off that as you grow as a nation and you live among all of these people, then you will, quote, drive them out. And we talk about this, not drive them out militarily. They're going to see the crazy, amazing things that I do. And they are so going to engage with me that their culture will disappear and the culture of heaven is going to take over. But you guys have to be alert because this doesn't work. This doesn't work if you start making treaties with them and you start compromising and you start to intermarry with them. He says in verse 6, Hittites, Jebusites, be careful not to make a treaty with those who live in that land where you will be going. They will be a snare to you. Break down their altars, smash their sacred stones, cut down their Asherah poles. Do not worship any other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. He's like, listen, you get in there and you start living and you start expanding and I'm going to pour out crazy, amazing things all over you. Don't get careless. Don't get distracted. Don't start bowing down to their idols. It's not that I'm going to leave you. It's that it's going to distract them from being drawn to me. They're going to think that their idols and their worship sets somehow are also contributing to all the goodness and amazing favor that I pour out on you. And listen, I know from reading archaeology books, we know that Israel struggled to stay focused, even though they did go in and commit genocide and kill many, many thousands of innocent people in the name of God. And we'll get into that maybe next season. Maybe we'll do Joshua, but I actually don't know what we're going to do next. Anyways, it doesn't matter. We can get into it some other time, but we know that they had trouble maintaining this focus, even though this is what God says. Don't let yourself be intertwined with them. Instead, be a shining light among them. But they didn't, and they did worship other gods, and they did intermarry, and they did make treaties with people, and the archaeology proves it. Now archaeologists say it's because this whole Yahweh only one God thing is a sham, because we can look at the evidence, and in the Jewish quote or Hebrew culture, there are idols in the villages, there are Asherah poles everywhere, and certain people worship certain things like that. There just was an inconsistency in their following of God, even though you could say technically they went through the rituals. They missed the relationship. Love is what transforms people. Relationships transform lives. That's what God knows. He's like, listen, if we're not in relationship, you won't be transformed. You can do all the rituals you want. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I'm doing it because it makes you feel better, but it's not necessary. You need to be in a relationship with me or this plan starts to fall apart. Verse 15, be careful not to make a treaty with those who live in the land. When they prostitute themselves to their gods and sacrifice to them, they will invite you to do the same. And when you choose some of their daughters for wives and your sons and their daughters and prostitute themselves to their gods, they will lead you down to do the same. Do not make any idols. Then in verse 18, celebrate this for 7 days. And verse 19, again, some people believe that this is God asking for human sacrifice. The first offspring of every womb belongs to me, including the firstborn males of your livestock, whether they be herd or flock. Redeem the firstborn donkey with a lamb. But if you do not redeem it, break its neck. Redeem all the firstborn sons. No one is to appear before me empty-handed. Anyways, so he kind of reiterates, don't integrate with them. They will integrate your beliefs into them, and you will start to integrate their beliefs into you. Instead, I want you to celebrate. I want you to spend time together. He's like, celebrate the festival of unleavened bread. I want you to be thankful. I want you to honor. I want you to worship. I want you to be unique. The nations will be driven out, or they will be absorbed, in essence, into heaven on earth. The beliefs of God's goodness and his miracles will change the world. This is what we're going for. And one of the ways that you are going to be that example is you are going to release to me and honor me with your firstborn sons. The Jewish oral tradition and written tradition is that the firstborn son was responsible for the family to learn and understand the laws of God, the things that Moses was writing down, and then transfer it to the family. They were responsible. Now, the rest of the family could also sit and study it if they had the time and the money, but the firstborn son had to. God's like, I don't want you guys to miss this. And then the sacrifice of the animals. I want you to set these things apart. And then I want you to set apart one day a week. You see, all the other nations are going to be working 7 days a week. All the other nations are going to literally, kill their children, their firstborn sons, in the name of an idol. I don't want you to do that. I want your firstborn sons to be the most educated ones, the ones that the rest of the family learns from. I want them to be the next generation of followers. I mean, it's a fascinating shift that God's trying to bring to this world. Verses 27 and 28, then the Lord said to Moses, write down these words, for in accordance with these words, I've made a covenant with you in this and in Israel. And Moses was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights without eating bread or drinking water. And he wrote on the tablets in the words of the covenant, the 10 commandments. So we kind of get bullet points of what happened for 40 days. Supernaturally, Moses is sustained. When you are in the presence of the Creator, the frequency of creation allows you to live in such a manner that you don't need food or water, because the Creator is your sustainer. He's the one who made you. I don't think this was any different than the last time he was up there. Now, he went 40 days again, so now he's been on the mountain at 80 days. All total. Two trips, 2 different stone tablets. He gets a covenant. They're reaching, 2 parties are reaching toward a higher purpose. And that higher purpose is what draws them together and builds trust through relationship. So after all that time with God, Moses comes down from Mount Sinai, and the 2 tablets in the covenant of law are in his hand. He was not aware that his face was radiant, because he had spoken with the Lord. When Aaron and all the Israelites saw his face was radiant, they were afraid to come near him, right? He's coming down the mountain. They're standing off somewhere because they know they weren't supposed to be on the mountain, and they're standing down there, and they're looking at him. Oh, here he comes. Oh, it's been 40 days. Yeah, but they didn't have a Google Calendar, right? They just knew last time he went up, it took 40 days. It'd probably take 40 days again. Let's not do the idle thing this time. Let's wait for him at the bottom of the mountain, which is where they should have been the last time. Anyways, they're there waiting, and they see him coming down. I'm sure they see him come down for a while. This is not a mountain that's filled with trees and narrow wooded trails. It's a desert mountain. So they see him coming down probably at a pretty good distance. And I don't know if he has a turban on his head or not, but he's coming down the mountain, and they can tell that something's weird. At a distance, they can tell he's glowing. Not like a sunburn, like, whoa, that guy spent too much time outside. Like, I've seen people that are glowing red. And it's scary. I remember going to a resort way back when we had money. Anyways, that's sorry. That was a rude remark. But we went to a resort, and I would get up. I get up early anyway. Get up early. I'd find 2 really nice chairs. not nice chairs as in better than any others, but I'd find them in the shade because we just know, like, we are not people that have spent a lot of time in the sun. And when you get down to a resort in Mexico or the Caribbean and you go right out into the sun, like, you can enjoy it for a day, but then the rest of the week you're there, you're wishing you never saw the sun again. So we've learned our lesson the hard way, and we just find the shade, we stay slathered up, and we enjoy the warmth and all that sort of thing. Well, there are people who just show up at these resorts for like a weekend. They show up on late Thursday night. So Friday morning, you know, they hit the pool, direct sun. They put on baby oil or something like that, like something that, you know, is just, there's no sun protection whatsoever. And they get right along the water or put their lounge chairs in the water. And they're like, yeah, we're gonna tan. I don't know why. I don't know why they think that. I mean, I do know why. They really believe that if they just get a ton of sun on the first day, then, you know, it'll slowly turn to a beautiful tan by the time they get home. And then you see them on Saturday, and they're covered head to toe. They've got a hat on, they got glasses on, and they're sitting inside at a bar or the lounge, and they can barely move. They're uncomfortable. It's terrible, right? It's not that kind of glow. I'm sorry. I got way off on that question in my head. They see him coming down. They're like, wait a minute. This is weird. This is weird. And they back up. They back off. He doesn't even notice. And Moses is like, hey, guys, where are you going? Hey, guys, hey. Where are you guys going? And Aaron and all the leaders of the community come back. They're like, listen, Moses, you're weird. This is not you. Do you have a mirror? Like, can we describe to you what's going on? Your face is like on fire, like glowing ambers of light. I don't know. It's weird. Can you not see this? So I don't know how they described it. I don't know if they found a kind of reflecting mirror of some sort and brought it to him, but eventually they figure it out. And they came back and they spoke with him. And after all the Israelites after that came near to them and gave them the commands of the Lord. And when Moses finished speaking to them, he put a veil over his face. But whenever he entered the Lord's presence to speak with them, he would take the veil off until he came back out. And when he came out, he told the Israelites everything that the Lord had commanded. And they saw that his face was radiant. And Moses would put the veil back over his face until he went to speak to the Lord. So it's, you know, this glowing face thing kind of freaks everyone out, but eventually they kind of get used to it. And he covers it up. I don't think he covers it up out of embarrassment. He covers it up because sometimes, for me, this is a lesson, right? This is a lesson that sometimes in leadership, your relationship, not even leadership, let me just put it this way. Sometimes your relationship with God is so tight that it intimidates other people. So sometimes you just kind of let it, you don't let go of the relationship with God, but you are mindful that sometimes what you say and how you say it can just be really offensive to people, confusing to people, weird to people. Now, I do think in a lot of ways, I mean, they knew that he was close to God. They knew that his face was glowing. That should have been an invitation and a reminder that all of them could get that close to God and all of them could have glowing faces. But instead, most of them saw it as a privileged situation where Moses got to be close to God and their job was just to obey God. They put Moses on a pedestal and in the end, right, they reap what they sow on that. They reap what they sow. All right. Wow, what a ride. We got a redo on the mountaintop with the tablets. Kind of a quick overview of what's on them. And then some real fun stuff at the end when Moses shows back up with a freaky glowy face. All right, we'll see you next week on The Epic Narrative. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, everyone. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to continuing this journey next week.
Don't go anywhere. We've got Bob Thoughts.
Well, everyone, next week is our last episode. And if I forget to tell you at that point, I just want you to know, thanks for the ride. It was awesome. I loved it. Appreciate some of you reaching out during the season and just saying, hey, I don't think I get this. No problem. Let's talk. It's been a blast. And others are just like, you know what, Bob? I may not really be comfortable with what your perspective is, but everything in me is happy about it. How fun is that? That is such a great way of looking at it. And I understand that. I really, really, I really do. So you guys are awesome. I want to tell you what this may have happened months ago, but for the first time in my experience, I went to pass on a link. Somebody asked a question in a group that I'm a part of, and I posted a link to that particular passage. It just happened to be from season 2, and I was like, hey, this is my thoughts. And then I saw this little thing. It was on the Apple app, podcast app, and it said transcription. I thought, that's weird. Never saw that before. And I clicked it, and it literally had transcribed the entire episode. And then I started scrolling, and every episode of the Epic Narrative has now been transcribed, I assume, by AI. And I don't know. I talked to my producer. He's like, well, I think I read something about that, but I thought you had to sign up for it. We did, I hadn't signed up for it, never heard, whatever. This is why it's exciting for me. I've been told so many times that season 1 should be a book, because no one has ever broken down the life of David in the kind of detail that we did on the Epic Narrative. And if you've listened to it, you know it's true. Not only is it 60-something episodes long, but those episodes, some of them, one of them went an hour and a half. One of them went, I think the shortest one was like 43 minutes. Most of them were close to an hour long. It's a massive amount of David. It's just a massive amount, all found in one spot. And I've always, not always, I've attempted to have people transcribe it in the past. That didn't work. I've had people offer, to whatever, help me do it. It hasn't, they're volunteers, they're just wonderful people who are like, let me help you. And it hasn't ever worked out. But at least now, somebody, and if you're out there, feel free, could take the transcription, put it into a Word document, and start working on it. And working on it, even AI sometimes has no idea what I'm trying to say. So highlight areas where you have no idea what I'm trying to say, work on the grammar. Many times when I've tried to write in the past, I wrote a whole book on joy, but what I said in the recordings, and then when I wrote it out longhand from the recordings, and then I tried to get it proper grammar, and it just doesn't flow. It just didn't. Like it honestly, it was a horrible book. And not even a book. I mean, we were just working on the first chapter, and I was like, it just doesn't sound like me. I don't translate well into writing. But at the very least, I'm transcribed into writing. And maybe somebody, I believe you would have had to listen to the first season to do this, because you have to kind of get my flow, and you may have to break some rules of grammar to make it flow, but I think it's possible. And if you're willing to help, and you just feel like, just message me, thebobswitzer.com, and just say, Bob, I'm going to give it a shot, and let's see what happens. I also plan on starting a subscription-based Zoom calls where we work through the first season, and now that it's transcribed, it'll be a lot easier to put together like a workbook to go along with it, not a physical book, probably an ebook that you could download, do some Q&A. We'd meet up like once a week and talk through the first season, maybe do 4 to 5 episodes a week. But that's coming in the future. Listen, I just wanted to touch base with you guys again. These are my thoughts. My thoughts are just racing after seeing this yesterday. I was like, oh my gosh, this frees up opportunities, and I hope you guys are a part of it. Listen, continue to subscribe, or follow, like and follow. That's what I'm supposed to say. Continue to like and follow the podcast. Pass it on to other people. I'll see you next week for the final episode of season 3. Have yourself a fabulous day. And yeah, I guess that's it. Have yourself a fabulous day.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to this podcast on any platform you use. You can also reach out to Bob for questions or booking at thebobswitzer.com or email him at thebobswitzer@gmail.com. See you next week, guys.